G'day guys. Do I have a little bit of a treat for you? So I've been thinking about the issues that we're having with all the toilet paper hoarders in shopping complexes, and this stuff right now, it's worth more than gold. So it got me thinking, like, what did the ancient people of the world use to wipe their asses? And it turns out it's fascinating what's gone on over the centuries to keep rear end hygiene. I wouldn't actually say it was too hygienic back in the day, but if you look at ancient indigenous people, they used a method called the closest smooth object. So wherever, and I mean indigenous to all lands across the world, wherever they may have decided to relieve themselves, they just looked around and they thought, whatever the closest smooth object that's not going to cut their asses open, and they've used that to wipe their ass. Wouldn't be very fun, I wouldn't imagine. Ancient Greeks, they used smooth stones, believe it or not, like river rocks. You would have seen in some movies, they talk about the three stones, and that comes from ancient Greece. And they would say, there was an old ancient Greek proverb that said, roughly translated to, 3 stones is enough to wipe one's ass. Yeah, ancient Greeks. So they had the 3 stone method. In ancient Rome, they had cities more so, and a lot more people and peasants to look after, and there was issues with sewerage filling the streets, so they created these public rest houses. And in these public rest houses, there was no partitions and things like we have in public restrooms today. There was just bowls all the way around. Everyone would just sit there and look at each other in the eyes and do their business. Now, this is probably one of the most low points of human rear-end hygiene in history. They used a sponge on a stick, and it was a communal sponge on a stick. Yeah. So they would basically, to sanitize this sponge on a stick, they would dunk it in vinegar and salt water, and then the next person would come in, sit down, do his business, pull out the sponge on a stick, have a wipe, put it back in the vinegar and salt water, and so on and so forth. Now, the ancient Romans actually pioneered the way, into modern times when it came to how we wipe our rear ends today. Now, ancient Asia, though, actually were the first to ever mention in any of their old proverbs or old scriptures about using paper for the first time, because paper wasn't widely available like it is today. It wasn't processed, and forests, deforestation and the things that we see today to create paper. So in ancient Asia, paper became a bit more prominent. They would write scrolls and scriptures, and there was an old ancient Asian proverb that said something along the lines of, I will never use scriptures, like important scriptures or poems, to wipe one's ass. So that's how we know, actually, through that ancient scripture that we read, that proverb, that they were using paper back in ancient Asia. This wasn't until about the 14th century that this happened. So let's talk about where it went from there. So early pioneers of the world, the early pioneers of Australia, early pioneers of America, the early pioneers. Essentially, these guys would use anything that they could to wipe their asses. But a big common favourite was, it was the dried out corn cob. They dried out corn cobs, carried them around, used them, to wipe their asses. They also would resort back to some of the most primitive methods, which were, the closest smooth object. So if they didn't have a corn cob, they'll just look around, whatever the closest smooth object is, it's not going to jab them in the ass, they would grab it, and that's going to do the trick. Now, in the 1800s, actually, they started using newspapers. So newspapers became more prominent, and they started like actually using it as a dual purpose. So in public restrooms, they had the newspapers for people to read, and after they had read them, they would take them, they would wipe their asses. But in the 1900s, it wasn't really common purpose to use. Actually, in the 1800s, on top of this newspaper, we started to see patterns being registered for this stuff, or similar concepts of actual toilet paper. But it wasn't widely accepted until the 1900s. And this is mainly because people back then thought, why would I pay for that when I can use a bit of newspaper or a corn cob? And that's all free. Even straw, actually, they used to use straw because there was a lot of horses and things, and most people were on farms in those days, so the straw was widely available, unlike today. So this sort of became more widely used, and this is a funny one, the way that they were able to market this and get people to actually use it was they used terms like splinter free. So we can only imagine the sort of things that got stuck in people's asses back in the day when they were using straw and corn cobs and the closest smooth object. It wouldn't have been too pleasant, so to say. Now, today, we have a problem. We have people hoarding and buying this shit, pun intended, by the troves, and it's like gold now. It's so hard to get. So what do? We can look back to our ancestors and see how they wipe their asses, but I don't think there's too many people out there that want to use a corn cob or the closest smooth object. I mean, if push comes to shove, that's what needs to happen, I guess. But it would be my advice, in nature, there are a lot of good trees with good solid leaves. Now, it's not nice, but if push comes to shove and, you wouldn't flush these things down the toilet. Do not block up the sewerage. It's been happening all around the bloody world. People have been wiping their asses with odd items, bits of cloth, flushing them down the toilet. Sewerage is being blocked up. We don't need more problems added to, what the world already is actually experiencing. So, in my opinion, if this is what I would do. If I couldn't get any more of this, because obviously this is number one goal, but you do not want to risk your life lining up in massive lines with what's going on with this virus and whatnot just to get this shit. I've got some because I stocked up on this sort of stuff before. I'm not a prepper, I'm a survivalist, but I did, we do need some sort of prep, so I did have some of this stuff before everything went down, and my family, I have 6 in my family, and we're still going on it. We're good. So in the instance that we did run out, I wouldn't be lining up in shops. First off, it would be my advice to try other things like tissues if you have them, baby wipes if you have them, but again, don't line up in shops for hours and hours just to get them. Secondly, a more hygienic way, if you didn't want to go the full bushcraft way, would be to get some chemicals, some strong chemicals like nappy sand, or even stronger chemicals. Nappy sand's used on baby nappies, and before we used to have disposable diapers, you'd be using bleach as well and nappy sand to wash cloth that was essentially used as diapers. So you can get old clothing, old t-shirts, you can rip it up, cut it into squares, whatever you need to do, and fill up your laundry sink, or an outdoor sink if you have it, even better, with water, nappy sand and bleach, and you can use that to wipe your rear end and wash it, obviously wash it out, sanitize it and reuse it. Now, again, like this isn't a video that's full of pleasantries. I gave you a little bit of a history lesson on what humankind used to do for rear end hygiene, I wouldn't quite call most of that stuff hygienic, especially the ancient Roman sponge on a stick, but it's, people had to do what they had to do. Now, it would be my opinion that if you run out of this stuff and you go to tissues and you run out of tissues and you go to baby wipes and you run out of baby wipes, I mean, you can go risk spread and you can go risk your lives and your family's lives lining up in lines with people this close up your ass, so to speak, pun intended again, in shopping complexes. Or you can just take some initiative and you can cut up some old clothing and you can get the appropriate chemicals, to sanitize these things. If not, if you can't even get the appropriate chemicals, there are ways that nature provides to sanitize things, and I'm going to make videos on this in the future, and especially like natural hand sanitizer, which I'm also going to make a video on in the future. So there are ways to do that, but while we still can go out and buy some sanitary products like bleach and nappy sand, okay? And again, don't go into shops and line up for it. Go at the right times. There still are right times when you can go out and you can get such things. You won't have any toilet paper left at these times though, but you can get such things at appropriate times when the shops aren't packed and full. So getting off point a little bit here. So you can go out and you can get, your sanitizer products, and you can use old clothing. If push comes to shove and you're really in the shit, right? Nature provides many different types of leaves on many different types of trees. Nature also provides water. I've done this many times in the past when I've been out in a survival situation. It's possible. Again, do not flush leaves down your toilet. Everyone, or most people, should have a bin inside their bathroom, and if you're using things that aren't disposable, aren't biodegradable, do not put them down the toilet. Leaves are biodegradable, obviously, but they can clog up sewer lines, and we don't want more problems than we already have. So you can use leaves and water, and then thoroughly wash your hands. So guys, anyway, I just wanted to make that video. It was meant to be a quick one. We've gone over 12 minutes now, just because people are freaking out about this shit. But there are ways around it. You do not necessarily need toilet paper. Of course you want it. It is the most commonly used practice. I wouldn't even say the most sanitary practice in today's day and age. Like some Indians, they still use water today, and it's actually more hygienic because they're actually washing their asses, whereas just wiping them. You see people say, if you had shit on your face or in your beard, would you just take this and wipe it and be happy with it? Not really, So, well, if you were, something's wrong. So it's the same thing. It's not even that hygienic anyway, guys. So if it came down to it and you had to use cut up clothing and you wet it beforehand, it's actually even more hygienic than using this shit. Anyway, I just wanted to stop by and make that video. Stop freaking the fuck out about toilet paper. Stop lining up in shops about toilet paper. Stop hoarding toilet paper. There's other ways, there's other methods. I'm going to be making some more videos in the future when I can get outside. It's a bit difficult being in Australia, a country that's locked down. But I'm going to make some more videos soon about natural sanitizing products. So stay tuned.